Whatever you're funny, Peacock's got it exclusively. Stream classic sitcoms like The Office, Parks and Recreation, and 2.5 Men. Plus, catch Peacock original comedies like AP Bio and Saved by the Bell. For all your exclusive comedy faves, go to peacocktv.com and get started.
The Capital One Quicksilver Card Show!
Cut! The Capital One Quicksilver Card is simple. No need for a whole song and dance. Don't be sad. With Quicksilver, you earn unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase everywhere. That's the spirit. The Capital One Quicksilver Card is simple, unlimited 1.5% cash back. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Capital One Bank, USA, N.A.
Welcome to the More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. I'm DJ McGuire, your Republican in exile from Suffolk, Virginia.
I'm Rebecca Kushmiter, your liberal Democrat in Kensington, Maryland.
I'm Cliff Dunn, your Republican not in exile from Newport News, Virginia.
I'm Kevin Kelton, a moderate Democrat from Los Angeles, California.
I'm Molly Cooper, your free-market conservative who votes Republican by default.
And I'm Greg Matuzak, your liberal Democrat from Cincinnati, Ohio. The More Perfect Union can be heard on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and written commentary.
Once again this week, we found ourselves going long after the official podcast and having quite an interesting conversation after the show is over. So here once again is an MPU After Dark special edition.
You know, the one thing we didn't talk about, and I didn't think to put it in, there are whispers up in the New York press that Chris Christie is going to get a job in the Trump administration.
Yeah, doing what?
I don't know, maybe making sure the meatloaf is at the right temperature.
I know, yeah,
Did you guys hear the
I have no
meatloaf
effing
story?
clue.
Hey, at least they already have a Secretary of Transportation, so we can not worry about traffic jams from him.
Really, what job would he be up for, DJ?
Salute, Cliff. Oh no, the job itself was
advisor.
the job itself was unnamed. Yeah, he may end up as national security advisor.
Nobody else wants the
What?
job.
You know, they can always make him president of the
Declining.
Fitness Council.
Oh, come on now.
Oh, boo. We're better than that.
I was going to say, you're better than that, Cliff.
You're right. It was a bad joke. I should make better jokes.
Maybe for the Trump administration, they'll be like, he'll be like the alternate. So like when the next one, has to opt out or gets fired, like he gets slotted in.
That's a great idea.
Oh yeah, no, he could be like Swing in a Broadway show where whenever somebody is indicted on corruption charges, Christie fills in for a while till they get a permanent replacement.
It's more like big time
understudy.
wrestling. They tag in.
The understudy. That's what it was. He'll be our national understudy. He'll fill in for the next resignation. That's what it is.
I see him as wearing like a big lucha mask, like Mexican wrestling, and anytime he runs down the halls and someone goes, "Quick, tag me in!" Anytime there's an indictment, and then he stands there guarding their office.
The scary thing is, I grew up in Jersey. I used to actually like this guy. Thank you. During his first term, he was a brutally honest governor, and then he comes up with an attempted pension fix in 2011, and then 3 years later says, "Okay, pensions are still messed up," and he takes no responsibility for the fact that he said he fixed it 3 years earlier, and now is saying that he didn't. I mean, it's just it was. I mean, I know I'm weird in that I'm an analyst and that I care more, but the fact that he essentially lied on the pension reform. That bothered me more than the whole Bridgegate thing. But that's just me.
Oh, I don't know. That would bother me.
I would say Bridget Kelly might disagree with you.
Hey, what are you guys hearing about? And I didn't want to put this in this week. There's no undersecretaries. None of them have been hired, and none of them have been working out. A lot of them have been fired. So all the secretaries of such and such, none of them have there's this big rumor going on that none of the offices actually work, and they don't.
Yeah, there were over 600 appointee level positions that I don't even know if they've submitted names on a lot of them.
Probably not.
Yeah.
For one thing, you have to get the secretary in place first before a lot of those can be filled. I mean, I remember when it took forever for Bush the Elder, because Bush the Elder pushed really hard on the whole John Tower nomination for Secretary of Defense, and so that took 2 to 3 months. It took longer than normal to get a Secretary of Defense nominated because for whatever reason, Bush really pushed hard on John Tower, and the Senate basically said, "Go F yourself. We're not confirming this guy." So William Howard Taft IV was the acting Secretary of Defense, and he couldn't appoint anybody because he was not in a position to do that. So 3 whole levels of the Department of Defense were left unfilled because they didn't have a cabinet secretary not confirmed. So you get that sort of thing with every new administration. If there are departments that, for whatever reason, take time to get their nominees confirmed, you're going to see a lot of those secondary and tertiary level appointments not made because the fellow's got to get the fellow at the top or the person at the top has to get confirmed first before those other appointments start going through.
But is it also possible that this is some kind of a management choice that, since he's going to make up foreign policy, I'll say by the seat of his pants. He's not really making it up by the seat of his pants, but with less formality than previous presidents. Maybe he doesn't need all of those sub-assistant secretaries of this, that, and the other. Maybe he's streamlining the process.
Yeah, that's the thing. He thinks he doesn't need them.
Right.
But it was one of the things
Somebody has to type.
Yeah, no, not just that, but I read this.
Yes, someone needs to know how to use the fax machine.
Yeah, very funny. Very funny. But Jay Winnick actually had a good book called On the Brink, where he looked at 4 secondary and tertiary level officials in the Reagan administration. I think it was Richard Pearl, Gene Kirkpatrick, Elliot Abrams, and Max Kampelman. And one of the things that was made abundantly clear for anyone who reads that book is that even a president who knows very much what he wants to do in foreign policy, or any policy for that matter, he needs political appointees who agree with him and believe in him to go through all the bureaucratic warfare with the civil service that may or may not want to necessarily do what he wants and may give him a yes minister scenario. The fact that Trump doesn't recognize that probably means he will end up being more restricted in what he can do because the civil service will play a whole bunch of yes minister games with him, and he thinks that that's also something that he doesn't need all these political appointees to do his dirty work, when in fact he does need them to do his dirty work. But he is too narcissistic to understand.
There's also the simple fact that he didn't expect to win and didn't have a deep bench on who he was going to appoint to these positions. He didn't even know.
Here's the thing, though, is that even if he expected to win, there were a lot of people on all sides who weren't going to be keen on working for him regardless. So his pre-election bench was going to be at least somewhat limited by that.
That is also true. A lot of alsos here, sorry.
And also.
By the way, I'm also deeply intoxicated right now, just so we're clear.
No, but the rumors around town are that people do not want to work for him.
About who?
Just the rumors around town are that, like I know people who were staffing up at the career level before the hiring freeze, and they were reaching out to Republicans saying, hey, here's your moment. And Republicans were like, no.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That doesn't surprise me.
Working in the White House, that probably looks okay on a job resume.
Maybe not that White House.
Not this White House.
Yeah, that's the thing is you've got a lot of people who, even if it was a perfectly pleasant job, would be afraid that he turns into a one-termer and it reflects within the Republican Party about as well as having been a Jimmy Carter appointee.
Jimmy Carter, he's a good man, even with lust in his heart. He's a good man.
Jimmy Carter is a good man, but not a great president.
Do you really think that there are people that would have a chance to be inside a White House administration and would turn it down because, if he's only a one-term president, it could adversely affect my career? That is your career, to get into the White House.
The Secretary of Defense turned it down this week.
Yeah, that
was national security advisor. That was the general who's going to be national security advisor.
Yeah, but one guy did. But I mean, how many people are going to turn down a sub-cabinet appointment? Because that is your career, to get into the White House.
Quite a few.
There's a book. Do you guys know the book? What do I want to do with my life? It's a book that you usually read when you don't have a job. So I've read it several times. But it's short stories about people who had career changes midlife. And one of the stories is about a guy who like worked at a Kinko's and quit and ended up working on the first Clinton campaign. And he ended up like becoming like a regional blah, blah, blah. And Clinton hired him to go work at the White House. He worked there 8 years and became like a muckety-muck, right?
That man's name is Al Gore.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Well, at the end of the 8 years, this guy was just doing right under policy work. I mean, he was doing some real heavy work, right? And he gets out and he goes, gosh, that was a lot of fun. I've worked with network. And so he goes and he does his resume and he starts working around and he goes to lobbyist groups and they're like, so what have you done? He goes, well, I did 8 years in the White House and before that I was a manager of a Kinko's. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're not hiring you. And he ended up going back to Kinko's.
Wow.
So it's a fascinating story.
Did it ever occur to him to not say that he was at Kinko's?
Yeah.
His
It
was Kinko's, Clinton, Kinko's. And they're like, so have you done anything else besides work? And then he was like, not really. And so now he's the most overrated Kinko's manager ever.
Did anybody here have an unusual career shift mid-career?
I worked politics for like 4 or 5 years, and then I worked casting for 4 or 5. It's the same thing.
I'm actually kind of going through one of those now because I was a cost estimator on DoD contracts for 17 years, and our firm lost the contract where I was working, but the firm chose to keep me. They chose to keep me on board. And I said, you know something, if you're going to keep me around, I'll cross-train, I'll go through maybe the PMP certification, see if I can get that. I got PMP certification, and now I'm a project manager. And I've stayed with the same firm. I mean, I'm still at LS3 Technologies. They're a fantastic firm. They are incredibly loyal to their employees. I don't want to slur that, no matter how drunk I am. However, what I am doing to earn my keep is now very different from what it has been for the previous 17 years. So even though I'm still with the same firm, I am, in fact, my job description is changing dramatically. And I actually catch myself because they say, well, what do you do? What do you do to earn a living? And for years I've said, well, I'm a cost estimator. Well, except I'm not a cost estimator now. Now I'm a project manager. And it has different priorities. It has different tools and techniques and various other things. And
do you have different business cards?
I have for whatever reason, I always tell people I run out of business cards, but the reality is I never actually go ahead and make them.
Neither do I.
That's probably a career mistake on my part. But yeah, it was just something where I am now, I've been in the workforce for 20 odd years, but I haven't been doing what I'm doing for more than 6 months, closer to 4 months actually, and it's kind of weird.
I haven't the faintest idea what I do. No one knows.
But let me ask
very
you this:
unclear.
Before you had kids, what did you do?
I was the project manager on the federal lobbying team for the American Cancer Society. Before that, I was the operations manager for a theater association for theater educators. Before that, I was in grad school. Before that, I was a fundraiser for a arts presenting organization in San Diego County. Before that, I was a fundraiser for a theater in Washington, D.C. Before that, I was a performer for a children's theater in Richmond.
And before that, she was a fetus.
Where? What was that San Diego County part?
I worked for the Performing Arts Center in Escondido.
Okay, my uncle is a high-powered ambulance chaser in San Diego City.
I never had use of his services.
Yeah, obviously not.
Molly, have you always been in academics?
Well, my husband was in law school. I worked in insurance. I was a nationwide insurance office manager, and prior to that, I did some underwriting, and I also did some claims with a company called Indiana Netherlands Insurance. Indiana Insurance got bought out by the Netherlands group, so I worked for the Dutch for about 9 months.
They're next on the list for an international incident made up by the Dutch.
Yes, we should pray for them too.
Actually, the Dutch are having. I think the Dutch are actually having an election
this
spring.
Yes,
so
we're going to